Noticed the sound wasn't just the rain, it was almost midnight. I was sitting in the living room watching the rain banging on the window, the noise in the basement sounded like a thumping sound. I thought it might be a clogged pipe or a loose piece of metal moving because of the water pressure. I didn't bother to check at the time. I was tired and thought I could wait until morning, but that's when it started to dawn on me that something else was going on there. I live in a 2-story house with a dank basement, not fancy, just a place I bought a few years ago because I liked the space. The roof needs repair and the walls sometimes smell musty on rainy days. The basement is big enough for me to store all sorts of boxes of old books, spare tiles, broken furniture and a few tools I don't use often. The place isn't pretty, the walls are concrete and the floor is uneven when it rains heavily. I often hear dripping water. It's a familiar pattern, a drip here and there and the occasional rattle of a pipe, but about a month ago I started hearing something that sounded like light footsteps. At first I told myself I was just tired or that the acoustics in the basement were playing a trick on me. Sometimes the water drips in a strange rhythm, but every time it rains those footsteps come back. They're not loud, but more like a gentle tapping sound if someone steps carefully on the concrete floor. Try not to make a sound. That's how I felt. I tried to brush it off, but it was still in my head. One night I decided to check it out. The rain was falling heavily, thunder rumbled in the distance and the wind was shaking the shutters. I got the flashlight from the kitchen drawer. My heart was pounding even though I kept telling myself there was no reason to panic. I just went down the basement steps, shining the light around and making sure nothing was wrong. If I was being honest, my hands were shaking as I opened the basement door. My basement had a narrow staircase with a single light bulb at the top. That light sometimes flickered because of bad wiring. I took the first step up and the wood creaked under my weight. The smell of dampness of concrete and old cardboard boxes hit my nose immediately. The air was colder than normal. I tried to breathe slowly. The flashlight felt slippery in my hand and I had to constantly readjust my grip. I reached the bottom step and looked around. My eyes scanned the shelves. Stacks of boxes and stuff, old furniture I had piled up against the far wall. I stood there for a moment waiting for another sound, rain dripping through a crack in the foundation making a steady tapping sound. I listened carefully. Nothing else happened for a few seconds. Then I heard a faint shuffle behind one of the metal shelves on the left. My skin tingled, my throat was dry. I pointed the flashlight towards it and moved forward. The shelves cast long shadows on the wall. I walked around the side. The shelves lit up every floor. There was nothing unusual, just dusty boxes, some old paint cans and a few rusty tools. I waited there, listening for any other noise. My breathing was too loud, my heart was pounding so hard I could feel my pulse in my ears, but I didn't hear anything else. I checked behind the shelves in the corners and even behind an old wardrobe, ID propped up against the back wall. No one was there and no sign of forced entry, no footprints, no wet spots. No boxes opened. After 10 minutes, I told myself I was just imagining things. I went upstairs, locked the basement door and turned off the lights. I felt tense, but I tried to brush it off. A few days later the sound came again in another shower. This time I was almost certain it was footsteps moving slowly in circles. I had that adrenaline rush too. My hands started shaking. My mouth was a little dry. I remember telling myself not to get carried away. It was probably water dripping in a weird pattern, but I couldn't ignore how loud the sound was, like someone walking on concrete. The pace was uneven, sometimes stopping and starting again. It reminded me of someone trying not to stumble in the dark. I went down the stairs again, feeling more cautious. I didn't like the feeling of vulnerability I had in that basement. The single light bulb barely illuminated anything, so I turned on my flashlight, scanned the walls in the ceiling. I thought there might be a leak in a pipe or something had fallen on the floor, but I didn't see any leaks. The basement was drier than I expected due to the heavy rain. No puddles, just a thin layer of moisture near the outer edge of the floor. I walked around each row of shelves, then the old furniture. I looked inside a few boxes. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel every beat in my chest. I clutched the flashlight that provided me with a